Welcome back to another episode of the Next Level Minds podcast. For those of you who are tuning in for the first time, this is a podcast dedicated to those who want to reach a next level in their business, personal, or career life. Every other week, I'm blessed to sit down with a qualified guest and walk through their story of how they have gotten from point A to point B and overcame various adversities along the way. Before I get into my 15th episode, I have a couple announcements on hand right now. And first off, just to reiterate my main goal, which is to impact over 1 million people with the Next Level Minds podcast. But before I can do that, I'm going to need a little bit of help on y'all's end. And that is, please send this to any family members, friends, etc., who you think would add value. Number 2, please subscribe on the Apple Podcast app. And third, if you could add a quick review, that would be great. Good or bad, it won't hurt my feelings. That'll just help me out and help reach 1 million people. Now, most importantly, it's time to introduce today's guest, which is Terri Gallagher, an international speaker, author, and most importantly, the founder of Gallagher and Consultants, which is a gig workforce solutions company. She has over 20 years of experience as a gig workforce expert. Terri Gallagher has made it her personal mission to elevate the contingent workforce industry by leveraging a trademarked ecosystem model of delivery that includes a best-of-breed talent, technology, and alliance partners to provide contingent workforce and total talent management solutions. Her experience as a thought leader and workforce solutions disruptor has enabled Gallagher and Consultants to provide best-in-class workforce solutions and talent supply chain strategies for several global and domestic contingent workforce programs for Fortune 100 and 500 clients across sectors such as finance, healthcare, manufacturing, retail, and telecommunications. As you can tell, Terri has an amazing background. However, that did not come without multiple failures and adversities. And on this episode, you can expect to hear about the gig economy, workforce solutions, and Terri's story of how she got from point A to point B in her life. Just a huge personal thank you for everyone out there who's taken the time to tune in and listen to this week's episode of Next Level Minds. And as we like to say here, your mindset is your greatest weapon for the battle of success. Terri, thank you so much for taking the time to be a guest on the Next Level Minds podcast. I really appreciate it.
Chris, I am thrilled to be here, and I love that intro. I'm going to have to bring you with me now. Whenever I go out to a speaking engagement, you can just do that for me, and, I'll pay you. Let's talk about it.
I'll be the moderator, right? Yeah.
Excellent.
That'd be great. Well, first and foremost, appreciate you highlighting my introduction, but obviously you know yourself a lot better than I do. Before we really dive into today's episode, what do you want the listeners out there to know about you?
Well, I thought about this question, and I didn't want to go generic, And so I think a couple of things that this is really important. One, I have imposter syndrome, and I deal with it on a daily basis. Okay. And a lot of people don't know that because they see me as very confident. But anytime you start a company and you get clients, and, there's always that, at least for me anyway. Another thing is I started my company later in life. I started it at 49, which is a little bit unusual, although we're seeing that happen a lot more today, particularly in the gig economy. And I think last, I'm the oldest daughter, raised by my father, a steel worker. So I was, pretty much raised by a pretty masculine guy. And I think that's probably where I get all my masculine, energy from, like Scarface and Godfather are my favorite movies. So that's where that comes from. So those are some little tidbits to get us started. Of course. And so I know you mentioned you started Gallagher Consultants at 49. Where did you grow up? I mean, I assume it wasn't in Charlotte. Where was that? I grew up in New York, upstate New York, very blue collar, right? So I'm pretty used to scrapping my way up the ladder. That's been my kind of credo for most of my life. Gotcha. So Gallagher and Consultants, what is really the gig economy, just to break it down for our listeners? Yeah, and I'm so glad you asked that question because it's not complicated. People complicate it, but it's the workforce that's not working as a permanent worker. So anyone that's driving for Uber or works as an independent consultant or a contractor or working for a staffing company, basically anybody who is not a permanent employee is a gig worker participating in the gig economy. Gotcha. So
Were you always involved in that type of industry, or did you take the time to just like completely divert once you started your own company?
Well, I've always been in that industry. I started out in the staffing sector, and I saw a lot of opportunity to put strategies and processes and technology around this workforce and educate. And I wanted to basically do it my own way. And I saw a lot of changes happening, particularly with technology being the delivery system for independent consultants and freelancers. And I saw so many changes. I wanted to be part of the change and create solutions for clients that are in line with where the economy's headed today. And so that's why I created this consulting company and left a great big fat paycheck and a VP title to do that. And it's, it's like once you do it, you can't go back. You shapeshift into somebody else that's completely unemployable. So
yeah, that's like really interesting. I mean, we met when I was actually in the staffing industry, on the account management side, and I mean, I didn't even know this before I dove into it, but there's so much money and so much employees that go into this whole gig economy. I just assumed that all the employees at the banks or at the big energy firms were all just W-2 employees, but I had no idea. Just kind of a rough estimate, how much do you think the holistic industry is from just a financial standpoint that goes into it?
Well, it's a couple trillion. I haven't checked my stats lately, but it's roughly 40% of our workforce.
Wow.
And you look at companies like Bank of America, who spend literally billions of dollars a year in contract labor. Google now has more gig workers than they do in permanent employees.
Wow.
So there's really a massive shift in this workforce and how this workforce is being leveraged. It's not a fad. It's not something that is kind of happening and then we're going to go back to where we were. Like, this is the way we work today.
When did it kind of begin to make that shift of everyone diverting from W-2, just full-time employees, more into the contingent programs?
Well, I think, the Great Recession, right, which wasn't so great. Everybody calls it that. But, people don't really trust that it's safe to go work for a permanent, to work for an employer. And that's like the only thing on the table. And I don't want to disparage permanent employees' employment. I think that's ridiculous. But I think that people started thinking, I want to create my own path. And then, of course, with the evolution of technology coming in as a delivery system, and then all of these apps showing up and just really providing all these different work streams and ways for people to make a living. And there's a lot of people that say that Uber or that these gig platforms started the trend, and I don't think so. I think that they're responding to how we want to work. It's the humans that created that. We want the flexibility. We want to work differently. Not everyone wants to work for a company for 30 years.
Yeah. I definitely see that trend, especially around major metro cities, the Charlotte, the Atlantas, the Chicagos, et cetera. I think a lot of the younger generation especially likes that, more of the flexibility side of things within the work environment. With that said, what do you think are, some challenges right now in the workforce industry?
Well, I think there's a few things going on. First of all, there's a lot of people that don't really understand the gig economy. So you've got all the politicians and regulatory bodies jumping on and making it their platform that they're going to save these workers and help with benefits. And it's such crap, because you can go and buy benefits. You can fold them into a rate. All of these protections that were created 200 years ago, after the Industrial Revolution, when they had little kids climbing into machines, don't really fit today. So you've got, they're kind of jumping on these platforms and trying to create these protections that the workers don't really want. So I think it's really, everyone's kind of struggling to understand this workforce. I think the regulatory bodies and the politicians are a little bit behind. Companies are really struggling. How do we leverage this workforce effectively? There's a lot of misperception around who this workforce is, but I think that the traditional employment construct is really kind of crumbling to make way for this more fluid workforce and this way of working. And some of your best talent can only be found in these communities. So I think people are struggling to catch up to this shift that has happened very rapidly and very radically.
Yeah, I agree. I think a lot of people are just on the traditional way of thinking and not even thinking, quote unquote, the next level of things, right, of the whole workforce economy. So let's back up here a little bit. I know you mentioned you started your company at 49. There's been a lot of talks on all my podcast episodes about how you're raised by your family and the situations that happen when you're younger kind of shape who you are today. Would you say growing up that you always had the hustler's mentality, the work ethic, or was that kind of shaped more of as you started to go along in your career?
No, I've always been that. I mean, I grew up, we never had a lot of money. Like, it's just, same, as Will said, every hungry, successful entrepreneur, almost all of them have like tough childhood story. I mean, mine was good. I was loved, but we didn't have a lot of money. So I had like 2 jobs when I was 16, because I liked really nice clothes and nice things. And so, I learned early on, I've always had a really strong work ethic. And I think that makes up for a lot. I definitely I will outwork the competition. I may not have the VC capital and the big marketing and sales team, but I will outwork you all day long. And we've gotten some really great clients that way. So yeah, definitely. I think I got that growing up, and it's never left me, and I'm grateful for it.
Yeah, just to add to that, I mean, when we met, I could tell you were just such a hard worker. You're willing to do whatever it took to get it done.
Yeah, we have that in common. I think that's why we're both sitting here, right? Obviously, you with your 3 different businesses and your podcast and everything else. So
Yep. And I agree too. Like, I grew up, I started my first job landscaping when I was 12. And it would be like every dollar I made, I viewed it as a soldier of how's this going to provide for me? How's this going to provide for my future? And I think
love that.
Yeah, I think it helps me out so much now because, a lot of people, I think, graduate college, never had the full knowledge of what money actually is. And then they get out, make a decent salary, spin. But I've been blessed to actually know where every dollar is going because I've been doing that for 10 years now, 14 years now. So definitely agree with that.
Yeah, I think it's going to serve you well. It already has.
Yeah, let's hope so. Let's hope it continues the growth that we're seeing. So what was your first job? I'm just curious, actually.
What was my first job? Oh, newspaper route.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, and I had to shake down the old ladies who weren't paying me. That was really hard. But, I'm like, look, I need the money. So it was good practice for things later in life.
Yeah. Well, so what was that process like? Was it? I assume now you send out invoices and say, "Hey, this is net 15."
No,
30,
this is bad. I told you, I started my company at 49,
no.
right? So you young folks are so sweet. This was you didn't have that. It was just here's the invoice. You just give them a little slip, and they didn't have the money, and so. But I loved the feeling of making my own money, and I didn't have to go ask my parents for money for pizza or go get a pair of jeans I wanted, that freedom. And I think that's why a lot of people start their own companies, and probably you too, is because of that freedom, that you can create your own income and you can go as far or as high as you want to, and you're not dependent on somebody else kind of putting a limit on that. But the other side of it is if you don't hustle and grind and do what you need to do, then it's not going to go anywhere.
Yeah. What advice would you have out there for those who they want to create the financial freedom for themselves? They're entrepreneurial, but they haven't yet completely started yet, but they have an idea. Would you suggest any advice out there?
Well, I think you've got to just kind of start. And I think the biggest mistake I've seen is people wait for everything to be perfect and have all the right VC capital lined up and have clients. And you got to just start and kind of do it imperfectly and then just keep going and keep learning from there. And it's interesting because when I first started this company 4 years ago, there's a group of people that I kind of found and we bonded, and they did the same thing. And either people I worked with in my industry or people I met, and there's probably 8 or 9. And 4 years later, out of that group, I'm the only one still standing. The rest either went back to work,
wow,
or the companies didn't work out. And the thing that I've seen for me, the biggest sign of success is that they're just willing to do whatever it takes. There's a lot of people out there that, they talk about passion, but if you don't have the grit and keep going, 80% of this stuff I spend my time on is crap I hate doing on a daily basis. We talked about that.
We did.
Right? And so many people don't want to do that, and they don't want to do it every day for 4 years, and they don't want to wait, for the payoff. And I started with some people, I'm like, I know you're not going to make it. I could tell, and I didn't want to tell them, but they just didn't want to do the work. They didn't really want to do it.
I struggle with that too, and we did have that discussion. I believe it was last Sunday. A lot of 80% of the tasks are stuff you don't want to do. That happens with me as well. What advice did you have out there to put the same amount of pride and work ethic that you would as we are right now, actually doing a podcast, which we probably love doing, What advice would you have out there to like implement that same passion into it?
Well, I think it's that 80% you've got to embrace it, embrace the grind. We've heard that before, but I always try to think about my clients are counting on me to do this, and I really care about our clients. There's a lot of people in my family that are rooting for me. I had to borrow a ton of money for this company, and still paying people back. And so there's a part of this that's like, that's part of that path. That's part of me getting to the end game. And so I've learned to just kind of make it my friend, just like fear made that my friend too.
When you started Gallagher Consultants, and I think a lot of entrepreneurships have this, did you ever have any struggles of comparing yourself to others? If I don't have this VC, I don't have this, I don't have that.
Surprisingly, not really, because I felt like I was doing something really different in the space. I didn't really compare myself too much to other people. And, part of that is, I'm a huge like blue ocean girl. If you've read Blue Ocean, Red Ocean. So I really am a big believer in creating your own market and creating your own category and just kind of focusing on what you want to create, but be open to feedback and listen to other people. And I've gotten some really great advice along the way and some really crappy advice along the way too, but you kind of learn.
Yeah. How do you weed out the good from the bad advice?
I think one of the biggest ways is when people give you unsolicited advice right away, I'm just like, that's discredited because you're not coming from a place of generosity.
Yeah.
When somebody says, hey, can I give you some advice? I go, no, I don't think you're qualified really, unless you're like another entrepreneur. I know that's really mean to say, but you know what I mean? Those people that like, oh, can I give you some advice? You're like, no, not really. I don't think you're qualified, but thanks.
And then they look at you like, wait, what?
Yeah, so I think there's that, and I think the other thing I learned too is that when I first started, I thought everyone else was smarter, because other people who were running companies. So I listened to all these other people, and I spent $5,000 on a marketing strategy I could have Googled for free in like 10 minutes, and so I kind of learned to trust my own instincts and not to depend so much on outside people and what they thought, even though they might have a bigger company or they've been in business longer, or they, or people who teach sales and they know about sales and I had to learn to sell. And so I really learned to trust my own instincts and get advice where it's needed. But that's probably a huge mistake I made, is just listening to way too many people and taking bad advice that really wasn't a fit for what I wanted to do and create.
And I think that goes back to what you mentioned. The secret to get started is actually just to get going on it and actually take initiative.
Right, exactly.
And I think that goes back from learning from experience, because you can watch, 365 days of YouTube videos on marketing, but I guarantee you're going to learn a lot more than doing 30 days of actually doing the procedure of what you're trying to learn. So I think that all goes back to that point you made earlier.
It works when, you get clients. So, yeah.
So what was that process like of starting your company? I know a lot of people try to start companies like myself in their 20s. And then what was that process like after you've had all that career experience? And then I'd love after, if you answer that, if you could just do a deep dive on Gallagher Consultants. I tried my best to give it an introduction, but
talk about my favorite thing.
Yeah, talk about your company after you kind of follow up on that question.
Okay, so what was the question again?
Yeah, so what was that process like? Because like I said, a lot of our listeners out there, including myself, are trying and hopefully succeeding and starting businesses in their early 20s, mid 20s. So what was that process like of starting a company after having all of that career experience behind you?
Well, I think there's definitely some advantages. There's a lot of people that feel like, oh my God, I'm 50 years old. This is when I need to start thinking about retirement. But we're actually seeing a lot of people in the gig economy. In fact, that's the fastest growing sector, is over 50 in the gig economy, because they've got all this experience and they want the flexibility. But I think the advantages are you're a lot more seasoned. You've really got marketable skills. You kind of know your strengths and weaknesses. You've got some really great business acumen. You know how to make money. I've met so many startups, and no offense to like the younger ones, but especially if they're sitting on VC capital and they just have no concept of profit. And I was consulting with one company to help them build out their value prop, and they just got a $10 million seed round, and they're like, oh, we don't really care about profit. That's not really where we're focused. And I'm like, good luck with that. See if you're still around next year.
Right.
So I think that helps. I think the disadvantages probably are, when you're younger, you've got a lot more energy. You tend to be a little bit more flexible in the way that you see things. So I really try to be around people that are younger like yourself. And I have some friends that are younger that kind of just keep my mind thinking about things differently, because I think one of the biggest mistakes you can make when you're of a certain age and you get into your 50s is you just get very rigid in your thinking, right? And you've got all the answers. And I run into that quite a bit with some peers I've met. So
why do you think people in their 40s and 50s think that they're finished? Like, oh, it's time for retirement. I'm not going to build a company. Why do you think that seems to happen sometimes?
Well, I think it's just that's an outdated mode of thinking because that's what the workforce has been for the past 200 years.
Right.
You know, you work and then you collect your pension and then you retire and you find a nice community and have the grandkids. And so we're also living longer because we're healthier. So that paradigm doesn't really work anymore.
Yeah.
So a lot of people are starting all over at, 50, 60. I read an article about one guy that started in his 70s. He left a manufacturing career to create this kind of green waste disposal company. It was something he was kind of interested in. And then the first couple of years, he made like $5 million, $10 million. And it was like he was in his 70s,
Jeez.
So that's what I love about the gig economy. It's a great equalizer. There's a friend of mine's son is 16 and he does that whole slime thing. He records building slime and he makes $60K a year. He's 16 years old and he's got 1 million Instagram followers. So you've got him and then you've got this 70-year-old guy who's also creating his own company. And that's what I love about the gig economy. It doesn't discriminate.
Yeah, it just creates ample opportunities.
Yeah.
For those who are willing to put in the work.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So with Gallagher and Consultants, what was it like getting your first client and just explaining what you do, explaining your business process? Right. What was that like? Well,
it was a huge wave of relief because I was like, ooh, I can afford like the good lipstick now. So that was really kind of awesome. And, I think what we do is because I hate the word consulting because there's so many, there's some really bad consultants out there, and we're very much focused on execution and outcomes. So we're really a workforce strategy company, but really what we do is we're professional orchestra conductors. So we bring in technology and we bring in processes and recommendations, and we kind of use that and build out this whole solution around a company's gig workforce. So all the things that exist for permanent labor, like quality control and are you paying the right money and how are you leveraging that labor and where are you getting that labor? None of that exists for the gig economy. In some companies, it could be half their workforce. So we bring that in, but we wrap that around the way that these people want to work, i.e. they don't really care about benefits, but you do need to look at are they high quality workers? How are you managing and measuring them? So we bring in technology and solutions and build that for them.
So it's basically a wrapped up approach with all the gig workers in one company and you provide all those services to them?
Correct. And we also help people that, tech companies that are, providing gig workers, how to really connect their value prop to the client. So anyone that's participating in that ecosystem, we help them too. So the the on-demand workforce platforms, we've had them as clients and help them kind of build out their strategy and have that voice of the customer. Here's what the customer's looking, for. Because a lot of them, I'm a mentor on several talent tech labs in New York and then Packard Place here in Charlotte to help these companies because I find a lot of them, they're so in love with their sexy technology and they're so far removed from what the client's pain is and how to connect it. So we help them with that and what that looks like.
What are some ways you think they could get closer to what the client's actual needs are?
Well, it's funny. I'm going to do a video on this. In fact, I'm going to borrow this equipment. Maybe I'm going to book this.
Yep.
But yeah, I think the biggest thing is, doing your research and what is the client's pain and then doing a demo and doing it in a way that tells the story of the technology and connects the technology to here's how we're going to solve your problem instead of just, what most do is they just open up the demo and just fly through every sexy feature and function. They don't take a breath. They don't engage. And the client just turns off, it kind of turns them off. They're not really paying attention. So I think things like that, and then just really understanding the problem that you're solving and does the technology really solve it? And not as it just is because it's cool technology and somebody somewhere someday will want to buy it.
And really just focusing on the actual client's need and attaching the technology to the pain points that they may have. I think that goes with, I think a lot of people are trying to rush the process. Again, as you touched on, sitting on all this venture capital money, but then not taking the time to really hone in on the whole business operations side of, we need to do this, the client wants this. I think it goes back to that point you made earlier, for sure. So with your company, you've had a lot of growth, touching on the clients.
Yep, lately.
Lately.
Hashtag gratitude.
Yes. I know we touched on that a little bit when we met off air. Within every growth, I haven't heard one story that hasn't had any struggles or failures along the way.
If you're doing it right.
Yeah, and if they haven't, their business may fail soon. So if you wouldn't mind me asking, what are some struggles you had?
Oh my God, people wouldn't believe the stuff you and I talked about. It's kind of like you're in the honeymoon phase. I started out with I cashed in everything, my 401k and savings, and sold my house and sold my car and blew through all of that. And then I'm like, what am I going to do? And then I maxed out my credit cards. And meanwhile, I'm building a marketing strategy and learning how to sell and trademarking our model and getting people to work for me and grabbing what clients I could. And everyone tells you it takes a good 3 to 4 years. And it got to a point where I literally was just out of money. I couldn't borrow anything more. I couldn't go to my family. And I just remember one year, Christmas, I was home. I hadn't eaten in 2 days. And it was Christmas. It sounds like such a sad story, but I'm like, I'm not asking anybody I'm sick of borrowing money. I can't. It's humiliating. So I went to, we talked about this. I went to one of the hotels in Uptown for free breakfast. And I just kind of snuck in and it was Christmas Day and I pretended to be a resident there. And I will tell you, it's weird, but it's one of the best Christmases I ever had because I went, everybody was so friendly. And yeah, I was flat broke, but it was my company and it was mine. And so what? I live in this country where I can go and get free breakfast. And in an odd way, it was literally one of the best Christmases I ever had. The feeling of joy and freedom. And I didn't mind.
Yeah.
I was broke. I didn't mind. I didn't have the BMW and the fancy $3,000 purse and the $800 shoes and I didn't care. I was so happy.
Yeah, and I think I remember you telling me that story.
Yeah.
That's funny you brought that up again.
And by the way, that hotel, I promise you, I'll pay you back because I'm going to book some room. I've spent money there before.
Yeah, no, I've done that same thing at some hotels back in my hometown. So I'll pay them
talked
back
about
eventually.
that, yeah.
I know you touched on it earlier. You sold your car, cashed out your 401k, basically put all the chips in. Did you just believe in your product and service that much that you took that risk?
Well, truthfully, I didn't really know what I was in for. I did believe in it, but I didn't know that that's how far I was going to have to go. And I way underestimated how long it was going to take to make money. So there's a little bit of once you're in, it's well, I'm not going to turn back now. And I did believe in it that much. But also I think I just knew I would figure it out. I knew I would survive it, and I knew somehow it would just come together. And maybe you call that higher power or God or whatever people believe in. But, I definitely had help, from another source of, just saying, hey, hang in there. This is going to work out. Yeah.
So I assume people always asked you, how's business going? How's this? When you got asked that question when you were flat broke out of money, did you lie about it, or were you very honest? Oh, it's going great. We're doing this.
I try to be careful of the language I tell myself in my head or out loud. Yeah. And you and I talked about that, and it's just so powerful. People don't realize how important it is how you talk to yourself. So I would say the truth. I would say it's getting there. A little cash flow issue right now, but it's on its way. And I would never say, "Oh my God, this sucks," and I have no money. And because that's just. It sends out bad energy.
And bad energy, it's negativity. It can just bring you down so much and you don't even realize it.
Well, because look at what you're creating and what you're doing, and you're leaving the safety of. You're still kind of, you've got a little bit of steady money coming in, but you've definitely taken a huge risk.
Yeah, I've learned so much along the way too. I think it goes back. I actually had a guy call me the other day. Said, "Hey, I'm looking to start a podcast. I've been watching these videos." I'm like, "Hey, quit watching the videos, just dive in and start."
Just dive in. Yeah, your first one you told me you did on your iPhone.
Yeah. In an apartment, there's cars driving by. My first episode sounds pretty good though. So
yeah, you just start. You just jump in.
Yeah. Shout out to my audio engineer Matt Drost for the good edits on his end.
Yeah, Matt, he had great things to say about you, by the way.
Oh, great. So within selling all this, and then you took these risks. Was there ever a point where you were just so stressed out, I want to give up, this isn't going to happen, or did you just, again, keep pushing through?
I had some really, really dark, scary moments where I'm just I can't do this anymore. There's a couple times I literally couldn't get out of bed. I was just like, I stayed in bed. I'm just like, I can't do this. I suck. I've screwed up my life. I've spent all my money. My friends, I have a couple friends not even returning my phone calls because I'm I was like, how did I go from a $400,000 house in BMW and $250K a year to like a 600 square foot apartment with no furniture and a mattress and no food in the refrigerator, and I can't borrow any more money? Wow. And so I guess it's extreme. It's an extreme way to go. But I also believe that if you really want to go big and you want to create a big company, then you've got to equally the other way, sacrifice that big. Because anyone that's created huge, huge companies, these stories are not that unusual. You and I talked about that, right? Some of our mentors or people we admire.
Yeah. I don't think anybody went through the process of building something big without having to give up so much along the way.
Right.
Yeah, what kept you going in that time? It's like, I mean, everyone's going to have dark times and not getting out of bed and not having food in the fridge. I mean, what kept you going?
My family, my sister Jackie, if she listens to this, I'd call her up and I'm just like, I can't, I'm done, and she just kind of talked me out of it, thank God. So I think it's that. And I think it's also just that something, whether it's, I definitely, I do believe in God. I do believe in there's a higher power. And I think that's when that kicks in. And I think sometimes you have to be brought to your knees to really build you back up. Because frankly, some of the stuff that we've got going on now in my business, I wouldn't have had the guts to go after if I didn't go through all of those things, right? Of having my worst fear realized, having no money and none of the things that I thought made me cool with my BMW and all of that gone. And I'm still pretty cool. I'm still me. So I think that happens for a reason. And, sometimes people have to go through that to be strong enough to really then embrace the business that you're creating. Because I'm going after stuff I would never have had the guts to go after 2 years ago. But I'm like, I don't care. I've gone without food for 2 days. I've donated plasma to keep my electric bill on, so you don't scare me. You know what I mean? Like, what are you going to do? Tell me no? You don't like my product? What's the worst that could happen? Kick me out?
Yep. That's funny you brought up plasma. That's literally how I got through my last semester of college.
See, you are so scrappy too, right? That's that's the connection. Like, we will do whatever it takes.
Yeah, and people thought I was crazy. Like, I remember at that time I was trying really hard to invest in the stock market, and people were like, "Oh, just take the money out of your stocks." I'm like, "No, I'm keeping that." And I literally go donate plasma. Then you have a beer after, and you feel great.
That's true. Yeah, I felt really dizzy, but yeah.
What So when you're going through that dark time, and unfortunately, some people out there may be going through some similar circumstances. What's some initial steps you would just offer up to them to really get out of that rut?
Well, I think you've got to it's almost like you have to go into denial a little bit, and just kind of ignore it. Like, yeah, this is what's going on, but I know that I'm onto something. And you just kind of keep going forward. Even if it's just some days it's keep going forward means climbing out of bed. That's still a step forward. Maybe it's climbing out of bed and making one cold call, or climbing out of bed and a script for a video, or climbing out of bed and put together that proposal, whatever it takes. But I think you just have to keep going. It's such a cliche. Like, I don't feel like I'm going to share anything that hasn't already been said 1,000 times, but it's so much more meaningful when you experience it, because you're like, my God, that's so true. To never give up. Like that's the most profound thing. But it's true.
Yeah. Would you say that a lot of people are just, they get comfortable in the rut that they're in and they don't even realize that they're in one?
Well, yeah. I mean, it's definitely seductive, right? Comfort. And, there's so many people out there that have things they want to do. And it's like, wow, the kids are in college and I can't, and I've got a wife. But I don't think that if you really want to do something, you'll figure it out. There's lots of successful entrepreneurs that had wives and kids, and look at the author of Harry Potter, right, on welfare. What was her name? I can't remember her name. You know what I'm talking about?
JK.
Yeah,
JK Rowling.
She was on welfare with her kid, and
That's
same
right.
thing. And she somehow figured it out. So I think if you want it badly enough to go after it, and I also believe like we are amazing creatures, human beings. We have these amazing brains and what we can create and what we can do. And there's so many people that go to their grave and never, ever explore that. But I firmly believe that every single person on this planet was put on this planet for a very powerful reason. No one else will exist like you ever. You're the only one. You're the only one. And so I think that you being you and you guys listening out there, if you're having those dark moments and you're like, I suck and I have no money and this is the stupidest thing I ever did. My wife is leaving me. Just know that if you created something and you started, you did that for a reason. That was not accidental.
That's such a good point. Everyone has their own true purpose.
True, absolutely.
How do you think that people out there could find the purpose that they're meant to do? Is it just by trying stuff or praying or what's out there for that?
I don't think it's an aha moment. I think it's something like, hey, I think it's more like, I'd really like to do this. Let's go and let me try it out. And it might not be the right thing, but I think that's the biggest mistake. Everybody waits for angels to come down and tell them this is your purpose. And I think the voice that tells you your purpose is much quieter and it's much easier to ignore.
And again, I know we've reiterated this so much, but I think it just goes back again to trying things and putting your foot in the water. Like I would have never learned what I know about myself today and like my potential purpose I think I have if I have never made the jump and started this podcast.
Exactly.
Because now I'm like, wow, like I've had people randomly text me say, I really like this episode. This helped me get through this. And I'm like, wow, like I feel like one of my main purposes right now is helping people reach their full potential. But I would have never realized that, if I just worked 8 to 5 and never tried anything different.
Yeah, you just start, just go.
Yeah.
Don't wait for it to be perfect.
What would you say like one of your biggest learning lessons was along the way of just kind of the growth that you've had?
Probably the biggest thing is, I was kind of a jerk before I started this process, I was just so full
You're
of
so
like,
nice now.
I know, I'm so much nicer, but after going through this and building your own company, because it really strips away all your crap because you're left with yourself because it's your company. So I really learned that I'm a lot stronger than I thought I was. I've become a much more authentic person. I've become much more, I'm a kinder person. I just was so oblivious before with my BMW and my house and my big fat check and so disconnected from who I really was. And so, somebody once said, and Ed Milet and a few others, you and I love these guys. But they say that starting your own company is the best self-development plan out there because it strips away your crap and it forces you to really embrace who you are. And you're left alone, you on the stage creating that company. And you're just forced, if you've got demons, they're going to show up. And you're just forced to really just be your most authentic, strongest self. Because if you can't, you're not going to eat. You've got to figure that out.
That's such a good point.
Yeah,
Yeah, I do. And we talked about Ed Milet a little bit. Like he used to shower when he got evicted outside in his pool shower.
I was waving at him. Hey, Ed, I don't have any. There's this great brunch down at the hotel.
Yeah.
If I was there, I would have told him.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. He actually was in Charlotte not too long ago.
Oh, I missed him.
Yeah. Those guys always randomly come through here. Do you have any? I know you touched on gratitude a little bit, and I've been really big on this lately. Is a morning routine and an evening routine. Do you have anything that kind of just gets you started for the day or ends the day on a positive note?
Yeah, I really do. I do have a routine and I really try to stick with it. So the first one, I do meditate. I use Insight Timer, or Headspace. Those are some good ones. And then I also, every morning, I fill out the 3 things I'm most grateful for and then what I'm most proud of that day. And I put it in Asana. It's a project management tool.
Oh, yeah. I actually use that, yeah.
Yeah, I love it. And so I have different categories, even not just work, but spiritual, health.
Yeah.
And then I try to put goals in each of those. And I just try to get my mind right, and focus on what I have to be grateful for. But there's some days I jump out of bed and I'm just like, things are exploding in my business and it's, and I don't meditate. And so, but yeah, I'm very committed to that routine. And sometimes I do forget. And then every Friday, I actually have a journal, not a journal, but it's a book of all of my biggest goals. And I look through them and then I copy them over. I write them every Friday, which is really time consuming and annoying but the purpose of writing them, and it just does something to your brain. It just kind of plugs it into your brain. Yeah. And then I write, what could I have done better to meet these goals? But yeah, I have a little notebook and I've scratched a few off this month, which is really pretty
congrats.
cool. Yeah, thank you.
Do you Do you do any evening journals at all, or is it mainly just the Friday work and in the morning?
Yeah, no, not really. I mean, there's some days I'll come back and I'll kind of reflect, but the things in the morning are what I kind of stick with.
How often do you look at your goals and kind of evaluate your 1 month, 3 months, 6 months goals, or do you do that a lot? Or
Well, I have every Friday, and then also in my Asana project, I have more tangible goals, but I have financial goals that I want to meet and goals in my company, and I have a manifesting PowerPoint. I do all of that hokey woo-woo stuff.
Yeah.
But I look at that too. I think the biggest thing is I picture it in my mind and what it would feel like in my body to like get the black Maserati, and I picture myself driving it. And so I do things like that. Or, I had a really challenging client call coming up, and I was nervous because these guys are tough, and I just pictured what would it be like them laughing and they loved my proposal, and what does that feel like in my body. And I do things like that. I do hokey stuff like that, but it does work.
It does.
Do you?
It
works.
And people
most of the time
crazy shared. I'm like, trust me, it works.
Yeah, I do all that.
It's like trying to describe, for people who don't do it, it's like trying to describe you just saw like a genie or something. It's
right,
like, I swear it works. I swear it'll grant your wishes. How do you, and I struggle with this a lot, how do you really take time and just be at peace when you visualize things? Because I try to visualize, the black Maserati, the plane, the this or that, and then I'm like, start thinking, my mind just goes crazy on things. What are some steps you take to just like be at peace with that?
Well, I'm pretty good at mind control now, so I really try to shut things out, and even if it's just like a couple moments, but I set time aside to do it. You can't do it in the middle of a hectic day, right? The mornings are really better for that. And then I really try to watch my stress level, because I struggle with anxiety. I've struggled with it my whole life, and so that's another reason that I do the meditation. And so I really try to just monitor my state constantly. And, the old me before I started this company, I would get stressed out and I'd react, and I was not in control of my state. But when you start your own company and you have the stress that you have and the things you've got to accomplish, you have to get your state under control. You have to.
My one of my friends the other day told me, he's like, it's impossible for the chemicals in your brain of stress to interact with the chemicals in your brain of gratitude.
Yeah, exactly.
And I was like, and that actually makes a lot of sense if you think about that. And just getting your mindset under control, because I think, for everyone that's starting companies and running a lot of stuff or high up in their job, I think, unfortunately, I'm sure you've seen it too. A lot of people implode that don't have their mindset right because they can't handle the stress. It's just really sad to see.
Well, a friend of mine, he's a fantastic mentor, Josh York. He's the founder of Gym Guys, and I've reached out to him a couple times, and he said, some days you just got to be an actress. If you're not feeling strong and whatever, you can fake it, but whatever you do, don't let them see you sweat ever. Don't tell people you're broke. Don't tell people you don't know what you're doing. Never.
Yeah, I totally agree. And then just showing the confidence, right? I think confidence is a main part of entrepreneurship and starting your business. If you had to describe success in one word, what would that be?
Oh my God, what did I put? Tenacity. It's not very sexy.
Yeah, elaborate though.
Tenacity, grit, like just keep going, just keep trying, just like you did. You threw your phone down, that's your podcast start. Then you got a little bit better. But for those of you out there that are starting a company and you feel passionately about it, if you keep at it, you'll make it, but you've got to keep at it, and you've got to do the stuff you don't want to do, and you got to do it consistently and for a long time. And you've got to go without money for like a long time.
And then again, I think without the money and keep going after it, and that's the whole mindset behind it as well. So tenacity, that's your word, huh?
Yep, that's my word.
I love it.
Tenacity.
Yeah, mine's always persistence.
There you go.
I think
Same family.
Kind of goes hand in hand. Like I've had a lot of people, just if I'm in a sales process with them, they're like, "You're very persistent."
Well, we talked about that. You're giving me some tips, some sales tips. I remember.
Yep. Well, I'm no Grant Cardone, but I've learned a lot. So, what's next for Gallagher Consultants, and where can people connect with the company, learn more about it?
Well, I'm coming with a book.
Yes.
So, Death of the Gold Watch: The Rise of the Gig Workforce. So, very excited about that. And we wrote that book really as kind of to explain in plain terms what the gig economy is and how companies can leverage it to, raise their productivity and just demystify it, right? So we really explain what it is, how it works, how it's really changed the way we work. So that's certainly real big for me right now. And then, what's next is just continue to grow my company and try to do it the right way and do it ethically and contribute something of meaning and be an example for my niece, who that keeps me going because I didn't want to fail because of her, and other people that are rooting for me. So that's pretty much it. If you want to find me, you can find me on LinkedIn, or you can reach me at Terri at GallagherandConsultants.com, or call me 704-640-2483, or find me on LinkedIn or Insta or Twitter or Snapchat. I'm on all of them. I'm like, it's free marketing, people.
Yes.
Why are you not on it? It's free marketing. It's not that hard.
Yeah, I agree. Especially, a lot of people, they're like, oh, I'm only on Instagram, but I'm not on Facebook. I'm only on this. I'm like, you should get on every single one.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then remind me of the book title again.
Death of the Gold Watch, The Rise of the Gig Workforce. You can find it on Amazon in print or hardcover or ebook.
And I'll make sure as well, guys, to put a link to the book and Terri's website in the show notes. So if you guys want to check it out, the link will be in there for you guys to look at.
Thank you.
Terri, thank you so much for being a guest. This is an awesome episode. I think you added a lot of value to the listeners out there.
It was an honor to be here. Thank you for having me. You were a great, great, great interviewer. So appreciate it.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. And
thanks, everyone.
Of course. And everyone out there, just to summarize this episode, I hope everyone got a lot of value from this. I have learned a lot speaking with Terri right now, just about the hustle and grit that goes into starting a company. And I think a lot of times out there it looks so glamorous, but it's really not. You have to take the time to eat dirt for a little bit. And you have to take the time to take pride in growing your company, because it is going to get somewhere. You just have to be patient with it. Another thing, too, that Terri brought out to me is just, it's going to be very stressful and it's going to be hard, but keeping that mindset right and keeping the dedication to the craft, I think, is really going to help you finish what you started. And I just wanted to personally thank everyone for taking the time to tune in today to this week's episode of Next Level Minds. As I mentioned at the beginning, please subscribe on Apple Podcasts, share it with a friend who you think will add value. And I want to encourage everyone out there to keep hustling on their business, career, and personal life. And as we like to say here at the Next Level Minds podcast, your mindset is your greatest weapon for the battle of success.